Yeah. Thank you, Zyrene. A very solid win there, as Jat had mentioned, quicker than average now with the new patches. I want to look at Cloud9 coming back from a very odd mid-lane turret push so early by Teammate, because that was an interesting piece of innovation that Teammate came out with there, as we normally see pressure in the side lanes.
Well, that was one thing that I really liked what Teammate were doing, because you could see what they're going for.
Yeah.
They gave away Kassadin. Now, giving away Kassadin, that's not ideal, but once you've done it, you're like, okay, got to punish this Kassadin early. So they bring over the jungler, they see an opening, and they push down the mid lane pretty early to try and get some global gold. The only problem is that Cloud9 were easily able to trade very effectively for every objective that Teammate were doing. Meteos immediately goes down bottom lane. Not only do they get the tower back, but they get a first blood for it.
Yeah, like the top lane 2v2 was already winning for Cloud9. And yeah, basically it was the fact that you have X amount of time you can spend on the map. And Calitroll spent 45 seconds walking mid and then back, which meant he's got a level disadvantage, the wave's pushed up, and it's a really good read by Cloud9 saying he either recalls and replenishes, and we get the turret, or he shows up to lane at half health, and we get the turret. So very, very good adaptive shot calling. How often do you really see the level 7 try mid gank, but they see, oh, it's a low Aurelia, let's make this play. Obviously beautiful stuff by C9.
It was a very odd attempt at a lane swap by Cloud9, because they actually warded deep. Maple Street saw it, right? So they ended up... Cloud9 was trying for a lane swap, but then ended up winning the 2v2 and the 1v1. So I was kind of a little taken aback by the fact that they wanted to go for it anyway.
Right. So I actually ran into Charlie in the hallway walking back, like, as Pix and Band ends, right? He's walking through, and I'm like, oh, hey. And he's like, hey, who has a better team comp? And I'm like, well, I don't know. It's going to be close. I'm trying to think about all of it. And he's like, well, by the way, we want a lane swap. I was like, I'm thinking about the 2-on-2 match. I'm like, but the 2-on-2 is like, it's close, like, you're probably fine. He's like, no, we want to keep Aurelia down. Like, Aurelia gets no farm, Malphite is better in a lane swap. And I was like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. And then I'm just kind of thinking about how the game's going to play. I'm like, okay, cool, because Sneaky's going to get big, that's going to be fine. Yeah, it turns out these guys are just outplaying Teammate. And we heard Porpoise talk about it in the pregame, saying, yeah, we typically lose our lanes. That 2-on-2 is close, because you can one-shot Annie with a combo like this with Sivir Leona. That didn't happen. They got out CS because Graves bullies Sivir in a sort of one-on-one sort of scenario. Suddenly Teammate snowballs are behind, right? Cloud9 starts beating up on them, and then all the team fights are kind of free.
Yeah, let me stress the point that there was a timer on this game coming into it, because Cloud9 got this Maokai with the Kassadin. Now, Frozen Heart is pretty much the single best item that you can buy against this Teammate team that's almost everybody is auto-attack based.
Right.
So Maokai and Kassadin, when they charge up their Rod of Ages, and when he completes his Frozen Heart, then it's going to be really difficult for Teammate to come back. So they had to do something early. And them knowing that they're not that good in early lane phase, that's where everything kind of fell off the rocks there. If Maple Street comes into the team fights, into the phase of the game where they've got two Trinity forces and they're trying to chase people down with that CS disadvantage, it's really hard for Teammate to pull out the win in this one.
Let's pick at this a little bit more, because, again, it's an admitted weakness by Teammate that they can't, or they are not as proficient in laning as other teams. And yet, they've picked themselves into a scenario in which if they do not get ahead early and press an advantage, they're not going to win. So why does a team put themselves in that position? I do understand, like we said, they did have a little bit of that innovation by pushing mid and attempting something.
So I think there were elements of this here. I'm going to cut you off because I know what you're going for here. I think the pieces were almost there for Teammate. So they picked Sivir, who's there for her utility, not her damage, right? Okay, you can lose lane, but you press R and everyone else deals damage. They picked Calitrolls, who's been great, right, in playing these sort of melee carries.
They picked Calitrolls.
They picked Aurelia for Calitrolls. Thank you. Yeah.
They're like, this is the top laner we need today.
We picked Calitrolls into our lineup. He's doing well, right? And he held up. Okay, there's the misplayer on the bottom outer turret, but generally speaking, he was holding up. We've seen his Jax vs. Gnar. That went well. They gave Slushy a free matchup mid lane. They got some global gold early using an extra, an early rotation. This team comp is gonna spike up at 18 minutes anyway with double Triforce. Sivir, oh, well, she's behind. Press R, who cares? This all should work 16 minutes in. It all shouldn't. That's actually fairly clean. It didn't play out that way. They had a couple of misplayed team fights, but the weird thing is, their power points they do have, which is their two solos, they did do fine, and they got their power spikes.
Exactly. I think this game is a good example of just execution. Yeah. It's not that Teammate had a bad idea coming into this game, just weren't able to pull it off. I mean, they even made a play, everybody pushing mid, trying to punish the Kassadin early. They just weren't able to ride their power curve.
Let's look at some execution. We do have a replay 16 minutes in around the Dragon Pit, because as Jat had prefaced this fight by saying, this is probably not a fight Cloud9 wants to take. We're 16 minutes in, they scale harder. Cloud9 finds the correct engage, though, and I feel like it's more of a misplay on teammates' part by allowing them that. So, Freak, I'm going to let you walk through.
Okay, so let's pull the replay up. There's 3 big things I want to point out here. So, number 1, the biggest weakness of double AD comps is getting flanked. Because as Jap talked about it, they're squishies, they're basically pinatas running around, and if you get a Maokai flank, someone's rooted up, someone's going to die. That's a guaranteed situation here. And lo and behold, look at your screens. That's a ward being teleported on by a Maokai. Already bad news. Problem number 2, they're not bringing in their own champion. Look at that trinket ward next to the ward that Maokai is teleporting to. That's supposed to be red right now with an Aurelia showing up. One of these is not like the other, and it's not because one's a pretty little flower. And so it's a problem of a 4v5, allowing themselves to get flanked, and then having no way of peeling when that does happen. Like if it was Janna instead of Leona, for example, they could be like, oh, shoot, Maokai. Whatever. Let's try over. None of those occurred here. Let's roll the clip out. It's honestly a pretty easy team fight for C9 to win. Okay, they don't get Dragon. No big deal. But look how much burst you got. Okay, so Maokai's going to land a root. There's the burst from Cassin. There's the burst from Graves. There's the burst from Annie. Look at all these hard engages get to happen. Meteos has an ulti as well when Porpoise Pops comes in. There's so much targeted CC and so much backline reach from Cloud9 that if you ever get a fight anything like this, someone dies, half your damage output's gone. Welcome to a free team fight.
And Aurelia's late to the party, didn't get the...
I think that's the execution part, right?
Yeah.
Like we didn't have all 5 people here ready for this dragon that we started.
And we got flanked.
Right, with teleport available, too.
Right,
Yeah.
you just didn't press D.
The other thing, though, is that I really like what Cloud9 did coming into this game. They obviously picked this comp for a reason. They're like, okay, we're going to scale up. We're going to not go for these early dragons. They gave away the first one easily. They're just like, we're going to take bottom turret and walk away. You guys can go ahead and spend your time taking that dragon. Don't really care about it early on because it doesn't have that big of an impact early on, and they didn't want a team fight early on.
Yeah. We saw in the interview, Hai was mentioning that he feels like one of the larger aspects of improvement that they can look for is his own individual play in the mid lane.
Yeah.
I think it's a really interesting dynamic, though, that he was talking about how when he starts to, fall behind in the mid lane, he actually passes off his shot-calling duties to another member.
Well, I actually like that.
It makes sense, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like, when you can no longer sort of estimate your own abilities, right? Like, you died because you kept misjudging what you could do. It already puts you in a mindset of like, okay, I'm clearly misjudging the game already. Let's put it in someone's hands who is judging the game properly and is judging their engagements. And also, I just find like when I'm playing League, I kind of always assume people around my power level. Like if I'm 0-4, I'm like, oh, our team is behind, we can't take fights. Well, that's usually not true. Someone else is usually doing okay.
All right, well, that's about it for that game. We are going to step away for just 3.5 minutes, but when we return, we'll check back in on our Twitter question of the day, and then it's back into the action with Team Dignitas versus TSM. The NALCS continues after this.
I'm ready. My body is ready. I was born for this. I was made for this. Literally.
Looks like they may actually want it after the fact, though. Dodo's going to be the one to get hit. There's balls coming in at the teleport.
Yo, kill Aurelia.
Kill Aurelia and Jarvan. Jarvan. You guys are okay. Go for Corki. Nice.
Apparently there's no turret down here that Cloud9 sees as they just go hardcore on this one. Dodo taking hits. They're actually able to take the tanky support down first. Very much like a Cloud9 game. They come in to win their Week 3 first game.